As is customary for our webinars, before we start, a few words about today's organizer. This webinar was organized jointly with EuroCC Italy and Sweden by EuroCC Austria. And we are Austria's National Competence Center for Supercomputing, Big Data and AI. And EuroCC Austria is part of a larger network of over 30 European countries that work together to bridge the gap between cutting-edge technology and between real-world applications. And as EuroCC, we support academia, but also the public sector. We support SMEs and industry with expertise, training in the areas of supercomputing, big data, and AI, and with consulting. To keep things smooth today, a few housekeeping rules. So as I said previously, the webinar is going to be recorded. Participants' names will not appear in the recording, and the recording and the slides will be published afterwards on the event page and on our YouTube channel. During the presentations, feel free to drop questions in the chat or use the Q&A feature, and all questions will be answered during the Q&A session after the webinars. And during the Q&A session, you will have the opportunity to ask questions directly. To do so, you will have to use the raise hand button. And then my co-hosts will grant you permission to unmute yourself. So you can either post in the chat or you can unmute yourselves. I see that someone just raised a hand. Let's wait until the Q&A session for speaking permissions. If you have an urgent issue, just post it in the chat and I'll have a look at it afterwards, okay? Good. So this is our agenda for today. We are going to hear about the context, value proposition, and access to AI factories from Petra. Then about the synergies between AI factories and EuroCC from Thor. Then we are going to deep dive into the services offered by AI factories by example of the Italian AI factory. And Markus is going to present a typical user journey in an AI factory at the end. And then we are going to have our Q&A. Okay, so our first speaker is Petra. And Petra is the director of the Swedish AI factory, Mimer. And she coordinates the SITCOM AI test and experimentation facility and the test and evaluation of AI network at RISE. And Petra will give us an overview of the European AI ecosystem and on how AI factories and other European Union initiatives, like, for example, test and experimentation facilities, complement each other to support trustworthy AI. And she'll then take a closer look on how AI startups and SMEs can benefit from AI factories and when the factories will be ready to welcome users. So thank you, Petra. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Eva. I will share my screen. So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Great. Yes, AI factories in Europe. What is happening and why? So this journey started quite a long time ago when the EU Commission really wanted to ensure that European citizens and companies would benefit from digitalization. So they named 2030 the digital decade, and the journey started. They wanted to strengthen democracy, to make the rules and regulations clear, and also make sure that we get cutting edge technologies for people here in Europe. So that was like the whole aim with the digital decade. What has happened since then is, of course, a lot. But now the EU Commission is beginning to look at Europe as the AI continent. And they are now defining the ecosystem more clearly with the different entities and projects and organizations that support this work. And here is the AI factories, of course, one part, and the testing and experimental facilities and European digital innovation hubs and so on and so forth. That's other parts in this ecosystem. And the EU Commission will talk more about this on April 9th. So keep an eye out for that. Another way of describing the AI ecosystem in Europe is like a one-stop shop. And here the AI factories has an important role to help you all to guide in this, because there is so much now. So much has been developed in the sense of language models, support centers, tools, regulations, and different opportunities that you can benefit from. So that is one thing that we AI factories will try to focus on helping you with, to make sure that you end up where you are supposed to be, where you are at the moment. So that is what I would like to show with this. So AI factories has, of course, an important role, but so does also AI on demand platform, the TEFs and the EDs as well. So I would like to zoom in a bit at the TEFs, the testing and experimentation facilities for AI and robotics. We, because I work in one, we will exist for 5 years, 2023 to 2027. And our job is to test AI models and to make sure that you can test them in test beds that are so alike the environment where they actually will be used in the end. So that is what we are for. So we have 4 domains: health, agriculture and food production, smart and sustainable cities and communities, that's where I work, and manufacturing. So together, the TEFs are trying to facilitate test environments for you to test your AI models in, to make sure that you are compliant and also that your AI model is doing what it is supposed to do. So how does the TEF relate to the AI factories eventually? So as far as we can see, the AI factories will work with continuous development of these testing methods to make sure that they are safe, secure, and trustworthy, and accurate, of course. And also in the AI factories, we will support the AI model development so that you do right from the beginning. Compliant by design is something that we will strive for in the AI factories. But when you need to test in an environment that is as accurate and in relation to where the AI model will be used in the end, then we go to the TEFs. So development in the AI factories, and you test in the TEFs. So we, I hope, will work very close together. So what is an AI factory? What will we provide and for who? So that is what I'm trying to show here. So in the AI factories, you will access high performance computing, but also training and access to competence sharing and learning. So that will be an important part of the AI factories. And then we will have support in the form of high performance computing experts, AI experts, especially in our different focus areas, but also test tools and those kinds of support. And we will do it for startup, SME and industry, but also research and the public sector. So this ecosystem that we hope to create together will hopefully also be a talent pool and an innovation driver. So that is how we see them. And last but definitely not least, in in Mimer, the Swedish AI factory, where Thor is my colleague as well, we have looked into what more specifically would we like to provide. So we have listed it here. So HPC compute, of course, that is like the main business and the bulk. But training, learning, collabs, events, workshops, it should be fun to learn, and we should do it together. But also product development coaching to some level. That is important so we can make the right decisions. Access to AI experts, of course, also access to test and evaluation, and to be able to be compliant by design. That is much cheaper. And data quality privacy and support on data quality, and also access to data is something that we hope to be able to provide. And then cloud deployment support, of course, when you are ready, you can also get support when deploying your AI model and putting it to work on the market. And also access to tests in real-world testbed through the TEFs. That is something that we will work hard to accomplish as well. Yes, that was what I had.
Thank you, Petra. That's great. As I mentioned in the beginning, we'll have questions at the end of at the end of the webinar when all presenters have finished. To our participants, if you have questions at this point, just post them in the chat, and our team will make sure that those questions will be asked in the Q&A session. Thank you again, Petra. And let's get to our next presenter. One second. Okay, so our next presenter is Thor. And Thor is the director of ENCCS, Sweden's National Competence Center for High Performance Computing at RISE. And in his presentation, Thor will explain how initiatives like EuroCC laid the foundation to practically advance AI across Europe, and how AI factories are building on this foundation. Thor, thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Eva. I really appreciate this opportunity here. It's a bit terrifying to have 275 people in the room, but I'll do my best. Let me start by sharing my screen. Does it look right?
It's not full screen yet. It's full screen now. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, very good. Yes, thank you again to Eva and the Austrian team, Markus and Julia, and also our collaborator Laura from Italy for doing this together with us. My name is Thor Wikfeldt. I'm leading this National Competence Center in HPC in Sweden called ENCCS, and I work alongside Petra at the RISE Research Institutes of Sweden. Just minimize this window here. When we in order to attract our customers, we can offer them what you see up here in the top right corner. This really makes it very easy. It makes our job sometimes very easy. We work in the EuroHPC ecosystem, and we can offer companies, but also academic researchers and the public sector access to computational resources on European supercomputers for free. I will come back to this question about exactly which services we offer, but I will be zooming in and out, just like Petra did. High-level questions combined with zoomed-in views of different parts of the ecosystem. And let me start with a zoomed-out perspective on EuroHPC. What is EuroHPC? It's one of the European joint undertakings, which it's a legal and funding agency, started in 2018. As the name suggests, it focuses on high-performance computing, HPC. It has 7 pillars. I can start with the motto: developing, deploying, and extending and maintaining in the EU a world-leading, federated, secure, and hyper-connected supercomputing, quantum computing, service, and data infrastructure ecosystem. That was quite a mouthful. AI is not in this text yet because the pillar here dedicated to AI factories was added most recently among the 7 pillars here. So infrastructure, that's about funding, building a secure hyperconnected network of supercomputers, but also quantum computers and data infrastructures, federating these to provide seamless access across the EU, funding technology initiatives and research to create homegrown processors in Europe, basically. Also focusing on the software stack. Applications, supporting development and optimization on software applications that run on high-end computational infrastructures. Usage and skills, that's where we as a project fit in. So investing in education, training, and the national competence centers. International cooperation, Europe collaborates with countries and continents outside of Europe. And finally, the AI factories. I will not really talk all that much about the AI factories themselves because my 2 subsequent speakers will go into much more details there. Let's start with the most, one of the coolest things about this ecosystem, the actual supercomputers. Currently, there are 8 of them, although 1 more is sort of being built right now, and that's going to be the biggest one eventually, after when it's fully constructed. But it's very nice that, you know, on the top 500 list globally, Europe positions itself very well. It had these 3 systems, Lumi in Finland, Leonardo in Italy, and Mare Nostrum in Spain, in very high on the top 10 list in the world. Of course, new supercomputers are being built all the time, so you have to sort of course, the ranking drops over time. What do I want to say here? Well, just to say that, you know, the main point here is to expand access to HPC for public and private users across Europe. And through EuroCC that I'll come to, these users will be helped to really start using these resources effectively. Quantum computers, I'm mostly bringing this up because it's fascinating to me that we're at this point in time when EU is actually funding the procurement and building of quantum computers. This is, of course, not at a technological readiness level anywhere near HPC, but the purpose of these investments is to really enable scientific breakthroughs and industrial innovation in Europe. Against the future bet that quantum computers will bring benefit in a foreseeable future. And these are the current 6 centers across Europe, which where quantum computers are being built, and we can expect that by the end of this year, 2 of them will be operational already. But this is about AI here today. You already heard from Petra and Eva that we have the AI factories. There was a first batch of AI factories announced in December. And we in Sweden were very fortunate and grateful to be in that group, alongside many other countries here, 7 in total. And then recently, our friends in Austria and also 5 other countries also were successful in getting funding for establishing an AI factory. The name of the game here is to foster innovation and collaboration, supporting startups and SMEs in using AI, also catering to the public sector and academia, not forgetting about them, enhancing AI capabilities overall, promoting trustworthy AI, which is, I don't know, it could be said that this is what Europe now is sort of pushing for in a very tough international, global, competitive environment. And through these investments, really drive advancements across various sectors. Moving on, zooming into my project now, EuroCC. The motto here is that we bring together the necessary expertise to set up a network of national competence centers in high-performance computing across Europe in 33 participating member and associated states. And through this network, provide a broad service portfolio tailored to the respective national needs of industry, academia, and public administration. So in the value chain, if you will, between, well, we sort of, we bridge this gap between the resources, optimize software applications, hardware, and what does it say here? Processors and hardware and the supercomputing infrastructure. We bridge the gap to impact. We help bring benefits to science and benefits to industry. How do we do that, and how does that play a role in what we're in this new age we're in now with AI factories and potentially at some point in the future gigafactories in Europe? Let me go into that. There's a portal called HPC in Europe. This is the URL. It's still work in progress, so don't expect to find everything there right away, but it's rapidly being developed, this portal. A key part of what we do in my project, EuroCC, across all Europe, is to train people. Not training the models, that's our stakeholders can do that for us, but we train the people to do it. And we give workshops on many different things in topics in HPC, AI, HPDA, and quantum computing. We give webinars, boot camps, and hackathons, and so on. And if you visit this page, you will find more in the future public and open source training material as well. In particular, my ENCCS, ENCCS in Sweden, we place great emphasis on developing things in the open and sharing material openly to the community, so people can learn at their own pace as well. So you will find offerings from NCCs, but also the so-called centers of excellence, and later even quantum excellence centers and the AI factories on this portal. Another example, another domain in which we work in EuroCC is to work on pilot projects and proof of concept with our clients, many of them SMEs and startups. So what do we do? Well, we also partner up with academia and public sector once in a while. What you can find here in the portal are success stories from many other previous projects that have been conducted. If you're looking for inspiration, there's much to read there, and there's a booklet that comes out every year with success stories from the past year across the network. We deliver other services. We help our clients and stakeholders get access to funding. We help them get access to cutting-edge, sort of in-depth software development support. Two very important funding projects is the Fortissimo Plus. Another one is Inno for Scale. We can help companies write proposals, applications to these calls. We can help companies get access to Epicure support. That's another project where it's a bunch of experts in HPC programming, GPU programming, and so on, which can really dive into the depths of your code and make it much more efficient to run on a supercomputer. And another project here, one of the centers of excellence, helps with performance optimization and productivity. This is just to show sort of a palette of the different projects and support actions that are out there that we can put you in contact with as a one-stop shop for anything related to HPC. We do a bunch of things relating to outreach and awareness creation. Take this webinar right now as an example. It's very nice to see so many people here. So I would say the outreach has been rather successful. Another thing we do, which we're quite proud of in the network, is to host and run this Supercomputing in Europe podcast. You can find it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and probably other places too by now. And we have a new episode there roughly every 2 weeks. QR code right there. Okay, so how does all this relate to the AI factories? I mean, we've been doing this now in the EuroCC project since 2020, focusing on HPC access, training people, and consultancy services in some sense, proof of concept projects. And our motto in Sweden, but I think it's quite transferable to all other NCCs in the network, is that we empower Sweden's industry, academia, and the public sector to leverage HPC, AI, HPDA, and quantum computing efficiently and effectively through these standard services that I've been walking you through. And all this has paved the way for the AI factories to come in and really supercharge these efforts, in particular focusing then on AI. We've obviously catered to AI users. We've helped many companies developing AI products use EuroHPC. But we, of course, as competence centers in HPC, have core competences in many other application areas of HPC. Take molecular dynamic simulations and simulation of airplane wings, computation of fluid dynamics, all traditional type of HPC usage areas like that. We will continue doing that alongside the AI factories and transfer all our experiences to the AI factories to get them up and running quickly. A call to action to anyone here. I hope I gave you the correct impression here that the AI factories will significantly extend the services we have been providing in the EuroCC network. So whether your organization is just starting with AI, or whether you're already a power user and developer, there will be something for you. And I think Laura, the following speaker, will tell you more about that. So I encourage you to get in touch with us in Sweden. This is our work in progress website. There's not much there yet, except for an email address, basically, and we will also be visible on social media soon. So follow us and keep in touch, and we will be hiring soon in Sweden and across, I think, the entire network of AI factories. Thank you.
Thank you, Thor. Amazing. Again, questions, we'll have room for questions afterwards. And now let's get to our next speaker, Laura, as Thor mentioned. Laura is a colleague from Italy's AI Factory, actually, from the first round of AI factories from Italia. And she works there as a senior HPC technology specialist and technical project manager. But she also works as a coordinator at CINECA, which is Italy's supercomputing center. So Laura will share what kind of AI services, concrete AI services, users can expect across the AI factory network in Europe. For example, access to HPC resources, AI infrastructures, datasets, and so on. In the second part of her presentation, Laura will highlight the services offered by Italia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eva, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can see my screen in full mode.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. It's a pleasure to be here and to see many of you online. And it's a pleasure also to present the Italian AI Factory with a deep dive into some of the services that we'll be offering as of tomorrow, because tomorrow is the official starting date of the project, for which I'm the technical project manager. So before having a look at the specific services of the Italian AI Factory, I wanted to give you an overview of what AI factories are and which are the main activities of these new projects, because they also are strictly related to the type of services that each of the 7 plus 6 AI factories, 13 as of now, will be delivering to the whole European ecosystem. So AI factories are projects that are developed around AI-oriented supercomputer, in particular funded or co-funded by EuroHPC, of which Thor spoke about in the previous presentation. And around this AI-optimized supercomputer, it builds an ecosystem of services really for all the users in the European ecosystem. And in particular, it puts together, for example, talent and competence. So it gives expert consultancy for the development of models, development of services built on AI models, and also how to put them in production. It it wants to offer supercomputing friendly programming facilities, because what happened in the past year with the rise of AI, it became clear that typical and traditional HP systems are different, very different from how AI users interface with compute resources. And so what we need to do on our hand is to make the HPC resources easily accessible and easily manageable by the AI users if we want to see a fast uptake of AI in the European ecosystem. Of course, we also need to provide access to the services and to the supercomputer resources, access that as of now was mostly dedicated to research and academia, but that then was widened, for example, with the EuroHPC calls on AI data intensive that were open also to private entities. And now, again, with the AI factories, we will do a step ahead and offer compute resources more, let's say, systematically to startup and SMEs. And also a data center. So the idea that data, or at least the most important data set, the one that are most frequently reused by the communities, should be co-located with the supercomputer facility to avoid, let's say, a frequent data transfer by many users. That is, of course, a waste of resources. This, of course, also has to facilitate connection with European common data spaces that are other projects that put together data provider with data consumers, especially for industrial applications, and to enhance the ecosystem, as Petra and Thor already said before. So what are the main pillars of these AI factories? So they have compute, so they have a minimum available compute capacity. They have storage co-located with the supercomputer, and of course high-speed capacity storage to, let's say, facilitate, for example, the training of large AI models on the HPC infrastructure. They have to be also data facilities, so availability and access to high-quality data repositories, data center facility co-located with the supercomputer, access to selected common European data spaces, and also they need to provide guidance for what is the topic of security, so the protection of sensitive data, and also to provide secure and trusted environments for the users. And you have heard before also what Petra said regarding the testing and experimentation facilities, which will be a close connection with the AI factories. They have to have connectivity, so high bandwidth and low latency secure network, a ready-to-use set of AI-oriented tools to facilitate the development of workloads exploiting AI models. They need to provide user support, a service, for example, for optimizing the computing usage to speed up the training. They need to provide training and education, so a skill plan that really is comprehensive and looks not only at academia, but also at the private users, a different level of readiness. They need to engage and interact with the AI community, guarantee trustworthy AI, to possibly already in the design phase, as Petra mentioned, and also they need to work together, these AI factories, so that really no one is left behind, and we advance in AI as a continent, the AI continent. So now I want to do a closer look to the Italian AI factory, and here you can see the list of partners that funded the action and are also the beneficiaries of the project. So they are in the consortium that will deliver the AI factory in Italy. And you can see that this factory is actually located in a real factory. This was an old tobacco factory in Bologna, which has been converted now, and it hosts already the supercomputer Leonardo. Actually, here on the top, in the bottom right, you can see this white structure is the one that is hosting the supercomputer Leonardo. It will host the new AI-optimized supercomputer, and in the future, or in the next future, even if we don't know exactly when, also the new offices of the HPC department of CINECA. And what is an AI factory? So we said everything starts from an AI-optimized supercomputer, and then we have services built to exploit these HPC resources. And in particular, these services are thought to be 50% for the member state and 50% for other European users, because the AI Factory project is co-funded 50% by EuroCC and 50% by the member state. These services are free for academia, public administration, startups, and SMEs. And of course, they provide access to compute, access to data, expert consultancy, and training. And so who are the users of AI Factory? It's really everybody developing AI for science, so academia and research, AI for innovation, startup, SMEs, industries, and private entities, and the AI for public good, so public administrations. And now we'll go a bit in the detail of our own AI Factory. So we said everything starts from an AI-optimized supercomputer, but we don't have to wait for this new AI-optimized supercomputer funded by the Action. Why? For example, in Italy, we already have Leonardo, which is really the upper right part in this diagram. I will not go in the detail, but we have already a booster module where there are almost 3,500 compute nodes, each of it equipped with 4 NVIDIA A100 GPUs, 64 gigabyte GPUs, and this booster module is really already, let's say, optimized for AI workloads, and it's actually already used by several AI projects, both at the national and the European level. At the end of the year, Lisa, which is the upgrade of Leonardo, will go into production, and so we will have an fully AI module, which will deliver almost 168 nodes, 8 GPU H100 per node. So again, more than 1,000 GPUs H100 that will go towards the total amount of GPUs for the AI Factory. But we're also building a cloud system, which is called Gaia, where we foresee several of the projects that are being trained or fine-tuned on Leonardo or Lisa to then go into a production phase, so the inference of or put these services into action on our cloud. And this cloud is also powered by a storage which has several characteristics that make it very optimized for AI workload. In total, we have a storage, for example, already available at Leonardo, which is more than 110 petabytes of storage. Just some information on the services. We have 4 families of services. We have data-related services, everything that is on the world of data, and we'll go a bit more into the details. We have horizontal services, which are considered the ones that are not depending on the vertical domain for which the user is developing a specific service, a specific model, or fine-tuned model, for example, but that are applicable at different domains. Then we have domain-specific services, because each AI Factory is developing some vertical domains, is building some services around vertical domains. And for Italy, these are Earth, which encompasses climate, weather, and environment, agri-food, cybersecurity, and manufacturing. And then there is the world of skills, so training, and I will go a bit into the details. So for what concerns data-related services, it's everything that is about access, transfer, management, and also generation of data. So we will provide access to on-prem dataset, and here we are really trying to make a network of Italian and European actions to make the most useful dataset available already on-prem on our infrastructure, but we're also trying to build the connectors that are needed to facilitate the external data acquisition, and also to have workflows for data orchestration. Then we have, for example, cache-mediated data access, multi-protocol storage service. This is something that is related to the underlying type of storage that is available, but we will also offer tools for synthetic data generation. For what concerns horizontal services, we have, of course, expert consultancy for AI on HPC. This encompasses the phases of pre-training, domain adaptation, fine-tuning, RAG, model compression, model optimization, build-up of agent-based services, and so on and so forth. And we will try to always be on top of the evolution of the field to provide services on the same. We will provide the support for rapid setup of AI frameworks and workflows on the HPC infrastructure, access to on-prem models hub, federated learning as a service, But also we will develop open calls for SMEs and startups for project co-development. We will create platforms for stress and A/B testing of models and evaluation of model safety, and we have a full task dedicated to the support on compliance with regulation, not only the AI Act, but also the vertical regulation of a specific domains, where we have experts in the regulation field that are joining our consortium just to provide this type of support. For what concerns the vertical services, here we will do internal development of open source compliant domain-specific large-scale models. So we will create a high-quality compliant sectorial dataset that we will release to the ecosystem, Italian and European ecosystem. We will fine-tune and develop services for the ecosystem based on the large-scale models that we have developed, and we will then deploy these tailored AI services. And included in the vertical services are domain-specific expert consultancy. Just to give you an example of what we mean, for example, in CINECA, we are already building a weather and Earth system data lake, which contains several sources of data, also satellite data. And we want to provide, we want to build the foundational AI weather services, then we'll make available some specific services like AI real-time flood detection and AI impact services. So this is the level, this is the type of process that we have envisioned for the vertical for each of the 4 domains. Finally, AI skills. So what we want to develop is a AI factory learning platform where the users will find live remote session, but also self-paced course. We will develop face-to-face trainings, but also hackathons, access to advanced schools, live Q&A session with experts. We also want to host internships in all the consortium partners to give the opportunity to work on real problems. And also we will provide certifications and career development. So just a few take-home messages to conclude. Starting from April, May, there will be new opportunities for SMEs and startups to access AI-optimized HPC resources, both at the national level and at the European level. These add to the existing access already available for academia and public administration. So the HPC resources will be made more broadly and systematically available to all types of users. Developing AI models and AI-powered services will become easier thanks to a comprehensive ecosystem of tools, infrastructure, and expert support. And some services, particularly those involving expert consultancy, will be available immediately, while others that involve a certain type of internal development will be progressively released to the ecosystem. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to present you the project that kicks off officially tomorrow. So if you have any question, for now, we don't have a website. We'll be ready in a week or so. But as soon as it is ready, please visit it. And for what concerns jobs, as other people have mentioned before, just today we have closed a position just for AI specialists to work on this project, but many will be open in the upcoming months. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Laura. Perfect. Good. So now we're going to switch to the last speaker for today, which is my colleague Markus, who is my colleague Markus Stöhr. And Markus is going to talk. First of all, Markus is a project manager at EuroCC Austria and at the company Advanced Computing Austria, which is one of the consortium leaders for the Austrian AI Factory. And Markus will guide us through how different user groups, for example, SMEs, startups, academia, etc., can access services in the AI factories and benefit from the AI factories. And he will also touch upon what high-performance computing systems that already exist, for example, Musica or Leonardo, can offer already and what they will be offering in the near future. So, Markus, the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. So just I will switch to my presentation. Second. So, yeah, I'm glad to be here today, and it seems since there are a couple of people in the meeting, it seems to be interesting for a wider audience. And there will be now some things which have been said before, obviously, but from our perspective from Austria, how we have this set up and how we were looking into that. But as was said before, and we'll have it also in the slides, anybody can talk to the different AI factories with no matter from which country you're coming from. So basically every AI factory has also the duty or should also talk to people not from their country. Yeah? So in Austria, the AI factory will be run by, on the one hand, the Advanced Computing Austria GmbH, which is a company which is basically run by the academic by the academic institutions in the country, which are listed in the gray bar below, and the Austrian Institute of Technology, which is into academic research, similar to what Thor and his colleagues are doing in RISE in Sweden, for example. Yeah, and you also have on board INITS, which is an incubator for startups in Vienna that will offer special services like an acceleration program for startups in the near future. And as it was said, so I will try now to motivate what you can do depending on what your situation is in the near future. And as Laura said before, so we have now a few AI factories which will start officially tomorrow, and their services will be available basically then. But there will also be the other AI factories joining in the next month, so probably already before summer, and this will be announced over our social media channels and so on, so that you can find where to go. And we, as speaking for today, we are announcing the information that we have and give you the first contact points so that you can get in touch with us. And if there are any updates, you can learn from us. As it was also said, so there is the topic of the supercomputers that they can be used right now. So the existing ones that Thor showed, there will be also an announcement about access modes, especially for AI applications, will be also out in the coming days. I will have a few words on that on a later slide. I will also, so this is again a repetition somehow. So just as a reminder, no matter what happens in your country or no matter how the state of the AI factories are, you can always contact us via EuroCC, so we can do a lot of things which will also be provided in the AI factory and get you started on certain topics related to HPC, especially AI. But in the near future, the AI topics will be handled merely by the AI factories, and we had the information from the previous speakers, but here again just a condensed form of the contact points for the AI factories that you see today. And when it now comes to the access modes, there were also a few words about that already, and there are basically two ways to access the AI factories and the computing resources. So one thing is that you have an access mode via the via EuroHPC. So there we should at one point add or show a link. This I forgot this on the slide. So there's a central portal from the joint undertaking where you can apply for computing time on different systems. And if you do so, the EuroHPC joint undertaking will check for eligibility, so checking what is the status of your startup or SME, and what is the purpose of your computation, and if so, they will grant access to the machines. And starting by tomorrow or in the next days, there will be access modes that guide you or will give you access on the existing supercomputers like Lumi in Finland and Leonardo in Italy. So and there will be certain tracks available depending on your needs, and the focus is on speed of access. So the Commission and the EU wants to push this topic forward really fast. And the goal is to have access on the machines depending on how much computing time you request for either for certain tests or for great larger projects, no longer than 10 days that you can access the machines. So this is an ambitious goal, but they want to really enable the people start doing things on the supercomputers and then together with the people of the AI factories. The new systems will be procured now and will be available mid-end of next year, depending on how the tendering process usually goes. To my understanding, this will be GPU-based system, obviously, which enable for AI workloads, and they will be very similar to the existing systems, but maybe a little bit optimized with different shape, different software stack. But for example, like the system Musica, which we have built now or are building now up in Austria, this will be very similar to what we have in mind to have in the AI factory in the end. Then there's this is then let's say special to all of the AI factories. There will be national access modes. So the one half of the system is the EU, the other one is the national part. For Austria, there will be, as far as, so we are still fine-tuning that, there will be access modes in alignment with the national funding authorities and so on, and they will be announced soon. But the goal is also here to have the access as easy as possible for the SMEs, so that their problems can be propagated to us, and then our colleagues and the AI factory staff can start working on the real problems, not having the administrational part being a major issue or problem in that case. Yes, for applications to the AI factory in Austria, we have, this is just a side remark, we have an existing project management tool where we can create users and projects and see what's going on. So this will be integrated in the usual workflows for those people who know that. Then how does the basic approach look like? This is a similar picture to what Laura had. So the goal is to approach the stakeholders, or that the stakeholders can approach us in an easy way. So mainly the private users, but also the public users should have a single point of contact, which is here called now this AI service center. So we can get into contact with the startup or SME, and then we have to find out what their needs really are, and there will be either then a track going more into like acceleration program for startups, or more like working on real projects and helping just to do the things that are needed by other colleagues. And depending on what the needs are, there will be a dedicated, let's say, bundle of services which is put together that then the SME or startup can use. You can see it written down here. So there is training involved, but also everything else which is related to the whole life cycle of an AI development. The allocation, where does it go to? So we have the supercomputer which will be procured within the AI factories, but we have also external resources like other national supercomputers or supercomputers in Europe, where also access might be possible. And the other part, what is also good to know, is that there will be co-working space for interested companies just to go there and really sit next to the people who are working on the problems and learn within different people working on the topics. So if now, for example, a startup is coming, just one second. If a startup is coming and has, for example, the need for training a large AI model, or the need for speeding up their training process, so going down from weeks to days, for example, or doing a hyperparameter scan for finding out how they should approach their things, they can just engage with us, get in contact, have a first meeting, and then we will find out what to do, help them shape everything, and then in the onboarding process we will allocate either expert support, introductory lectures, training, the access to the machines needed, and also pull in experts from other AI factories or other sources which might be needed. And the goal is always, on the one hand, to make efficient use of the HPC supercomputers, to help the people and startups to gain knowledge and be more efficient in what they're doing, so that they get faster to reaching their goal, and also to enable them to continue afterwards with more knowledge and more insight on what is happening. One important part, this was also in some way shown by Laura, is that the software infrastructure which is put in place, so the access to the computing power, which is the lowest layer here in this picture, should be as easy as possible, so that basically domain expert in the end can access the computing power without knowing what happens on the lower layers so much. So depending on what your background is, you won't probably go down to what an ML engineer or DevOps is doing. So you have probably knowledge about your data and what happens in your domain and what should be done, so which models are around and so on, and you just needed to embed this idea and the data and the model into a certain workflow to get things done. And the idea is to be here to go to the top level here in this picture, to have an as easy access to do everything which is provided below. So there was just now the last slide. So everything was said before. So we have contact points in Austria there. So there's contact points in Europe, and as mentioned before, there will also be in Austria soon some open positions within the AI factory. And if you want to stay updated, please just connect to our social media channels or join our mailing list, and yeah, just stay stay updated. So I want to finish here now. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. And finally, thanks to my colleagues for organizing this webinar, and also for joining Thor, Petra, and Laura from Sweden and Italy. So it's always a pleasure to organize such events together with our friends from the EuroCC network and now AI Factory network. It's important to see what the others are doing, to be aligned, and also to learn from each other. Yeah. So thank you. And yeah, so now I think Eva's
Thank you, Markus.
turn. Yeah.
Perfect. If you could just stop the screen sharing, then we can.
1 second. Okay.
Thank you. Great. So now we can move to our Q&A. So I would like to officially open the floor for questions. As far as I've seen, the chat was buzzing during the presentations. And some questions were already answered in the chat. So I would prefer to ask the questions that haven't been answered yet. And if anybody wants feedback on the questions that have already been answered, we can do that at a later point. I mentioned in the beginning that participants have the option to raise a hand, and then my colleagues can give them speaking permissions. Since we have so many questions already that that haven't been answered yet, I would like to go through that list, and then afterwards, if participants want to ask questions directly, they or you can just raise a hand and talk directly to our speakers. So I think we can or we could start with questions regarding the big picture. And I would like to ask the speakers to just chime in if they think that they have a feedback to the question, or if they think they can, or if you think you can answer the question. So somebody was asking if there will be a European-wide roadmap to adopt European compliant IT services, for example, Proton Drive instead of US services like Google Drive. It's kind of a political question, but maybe you have an opinion on it. Okay, Petra is shaking her head.
I was just about to point to Petra, but okay.
Okay.
Answer that. I cannot answer that. I'm sorry.
For
I
legal
have to
reasons.
dig
Okay.
into.
Yeah, okay. No problem. Maybe we can answer this question in another webinar or at a later point of time. Thank you. Then another question that has to do with the US. So apparently, latest news tells us that US policies have led to a surge in open source funding. And this participant says that open source projects are foundational for HPC and AI. And the question is, if it could be beneficial for initiatives in the European Union like EuroHPC and AI factories to step in and support open source projects. Is there going to be a focus specifically on open source development? Or can you say a few words on open source in itself?
Yeah, I can just for what concerns, for example, the models that will be developed internally by the AI Factory in the 4 verticals that I mentioned for the Italian AI Factory, that will be fully open source. And we also support open source projects, of course, when it comes to SMEs and startups. There are some limitations to that we also need to take into account to provide a certain level of adoption of the technology. So we need to, let's say, to accommodate different perspectives. But for what concerns, I think that the large scale models that can be used for fine tuning and for building services upon them, that those will definitely be open source for what concerns our development.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, I also want to add that they are talking about, they call it public science, I would say. So it as Laura said, if there's a foundation model trained on an AI factory, that should be publicly then available afterwards, depending on what exactly the use case is. I also see that there obviously might be models which are not will not be publicly available. There might be smaller ones or just fine-tuned ones, but this might be also then a slightly commercial use case then already. These are also all the things that have to be defined either on the one side by the EU side, but also on the national side. The thing is, the message is basically everything can be done, but there might be some charges involved in the end. So, but this is still some open thing. The problem that you have here is they want to push the ecosystem in really fast, and sometimes the regulations and how to provide the companies with the funding or the support has to be clarified in a way so that the national funding agency are happy. And also the EU is happy, but I think the will to have it as easy as possible for the customers or startup SMEs is there, because it is seen that there's a large need, and it's a strategic decision to go into this direction. Yeah, so it's a really high political will there to support everybody as good as possible.
Perfect. Thank you, Markus.
Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned something important that I think was also mentioned in the chat, that AI factories are kind of newish, so there are still a few things that need to be clarified. But we are doing our best to answer the questions that you have. And so coming to the next question, a participant was asking how AI factories are going to be integrated with European data spaces. Anybody want to answer that question? Petra?
Yes, this is one thing that we will have to look into deeper, because the data spaces isn't really up and running yet. So we will definitely treat them as an important part of the AI ecosystem in Europe, naturally, but exactly how we will collaborate, that I cannot answer that yet. It's too early. I hope they will be able to provide like high quality data suitable for training AI models in the different domains, but in practice, how that will happen. Yeah, Thor, please.
Just to add to that, that in the meantime, of course, we will make data sets available. All the best, most commonly used, most needed data sets will be there. We will have vast storage resources, and we will, in particular within the target areas, the focus areas that we have, we will make as many valuable data sets available as possible. Laura.
If I may add, so during the proposal phase, we connected with a couple of European common data spaces to understand the potential interaction between the projects. And so for one of the possibility was that the AI Factory could propose to the European Common Data Space to be the compute for those use cases that the data consumer are identifying and that they need the HPC resource. Not all the use cases need, let's say, HPC resources. So one idea was to propose the AI Factories as a platform for the data consumers that are already in the European Common Data Space Consortium for the development of their use cases. And of course, our priority is to start again, as Thor mentioned, from those verticals that we have identified. So the data spaces that are working in those fields will be the first one that we will try to write a memorandum of understanding with.
Thank you, Markus.
Yeah, I just wanted to add here. So I'm not so familiar with the European data spaces, but in general, as Thor said, so there will be infrastructure on the AI Factory side to host a copy or somehow include data spaces. It could be European, but could also be on the national side. And I would like to turn it around. So if any if there is a user coming, maybe already here, somebody here has an idea and says, okay, I have here a data source which would be interesting for using it for AI training. This would also be a use case for the AI Factory. So there will be people able to look into data sets. So how is the data quality, and how could we facilitate this data or pull this data over to an AI factory? And then if the data is then local there, you can start working with that. So this is just it's not just to put in existing things, but there might also be things which can be built new, or maybe there's an institution or somewhere around which is not in these big projects, but has the need of providing something. So this is also possible from my point of view. Yeah?
Perfect, thank you. Okay, questions are still coming in, but maybe we could now move a bit closer to how users, commercial users, but also researchers will interact with the AI factories. And so we had one question in the chat where a participant was asking, one step before use case testing, where will the development of AI models take place at the AI factories themselves? I think this might be a question that can be answered at this point already.
So I just want to describe what I understand with this question. So developing of AI models. Yeah, I understand this term as like I'm inventing a new model which has not been used for a certain use case with different parameters or different layers whatsoever inside. This is basically, I would say, from my point of view, research. My colleagues might correct me. The main purpose of an AI factory is if you have if you have an idea what to do. So, for example, a work plan doing hyperparameter tuning, testing different parameter sets. This might be a use case for the AI factory, but it's not foreseen that there are people working on a new concept for an AI model and writing code and bringing this model to life. So it's about helping in the life cycle, going from putting in data in the model via training and looking at the different size, like steps, like having the quality of a model at a certain value and so on. So I hope this helps. Obviously, if there's a researcher developing new models, they can also apply for computing time so that they can run their workflows and come to a solution. But they are not people in the AI factory explicitly working on such use cases. Yeah, so this is some kind of a distinction here. Maybe my colleagues can comment also on that, but that's what my view is on that currently.
Thank you. Makes sense and seems like an important distinction. Thor, do you want to say something because you unmuted yourself?
I've been unmuted all along.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
I can add a comment eventually if so model development, as Markus was saying, it also depends on who is developing. So the access to resources and expert consultancy for the academics which is already in place in most of our HPC centers will still remain the same with the addition of the access to expert consultancy. If it's a private that is asking for the resources to develop a new AI model, then, for example, in our national resources, to ask for, let's say, a large quantity of resources, compute resources, you will have to go through an evaluation of innovation, which is made by experts that are in the consortium that can evaluate, let's say, the innovation in the private sector. So in that case, it will be on them to decide whether access to the resources is granted because it is considered an innovative project or not. It's not something that we as HPC Center will determine, because we can determine, let's say, the technical feasibility of the project, but not, let's say, the innovation on the ecosystem of SMEs and startups in Italy. And I was talking about the national resources.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, Markus, you might want to look at the chat. There is a message directed at you. If you cannot answer it in the chat, then we can come back to it later. But maybe first look at the other questions. One of the remaining questions is what capacity the AI factories will have for users accessing a generic user journey, for example. So are there going to be quotas? How will proposals be prioritized? Do you have an idea on that?
Well, we don't expect to be overwhelmed from day one by hundreds or thousands of companies or users. So we hope to be very inclusive from the start, I think. Exactly which type of vetting or eligibility checks or project evaluations will take place ultimately remains to be seen, I think. Something we will need to build sort of experience with ourselves in this network. But like Markus touched on in his presentation, there will be this quick access possibility with access to the resources within a day or two. And so everything has to happen very quickly. There cannot be an elaborate peer review process with long applications to actually achieve that timeline. So it will be much easier than what it is now, although I would argue that it's not difficult today to get access to HPC through EuroHPC with help from us in the ENCCS, but it's going to be even easier. And also, I mean, we will take into consideration all these specific requests and needs from AI use cases, meaning API access perhaps, and interoperability or distributed workflows across different computational backends and so on, which are sort of peculiar to AI and which the EuroHPC systems are not really offering right now. But we're very interested in developing our services along those lines.
Thank you. One thing that you mentioned, you mentioned that there won't be time for an elaborate peer review process, and things like access has to happen quickly. Could you just say a few words on why that is? Is it because of the AI strategy of the European Union and because Europe should become an AI continent, or does it have other reasons?
So the motivation itself for having this ambition to process applications quickly? I think,
yes.
Yeah, I think just to meet the needs. I mean, we
Okay.
realize this that this is a need. Having what do you call it? A waiting time of weeks or even more for smaller scale access like it is today. That's a showstopper in some cases, and we don't want to have any showstoppers here.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, thank you. Okay, so two questions that are not related to this topic, but I still want to ask them. I don't know if you touched upon this already, but one question is who the main high quality data sets providers will be. Can that even be answered at this point?
Not by me, at least.
Okay.
So a part of it is a very small part of the answer. So the full answer is we are looking into it. But of course, some of them could be some projects that have already run on the machine, both European projects or other type of users that have developed models, that have already gathered data sets, they have already anonymize them, clean them, filter them, and with their agreement that could be made available to other users. Another agreement that we are trying to put in place is with Italian providers of data on the population of Italy, for example. So we are trying to, in this case, not rebuild the wheel, but really leverage those projects that are already existing to define what high quality is for their users, and then make those data sets available on our infrastructure, of course, provided that they are useful for a large portion of the ecosystem. It's a partial answer because this is something that we need to really look into it now that the project is starting.
Okay. Yep, Markus?
So for Austria, it's similar like Laura said. So there will be some providers in Austria which will be interested to have the data there, and we have to look into that. For sure, I can say that we have the EODC, so Earth Observation Data Center data somehow available because they're in the consortium and they already have similar things running. So it's about Earth observation data from the Sentinel satellites, and there's a hub which stores all the data which comes in and stores also the pre-processed data for usage of which can be used by companies or by researchers. And this is something we have in place. We will see what will be added. But yeah, since the, let's say, the process of setting up these AI factories was so fast, all these negotiations or agreements will follow now. So yeah, everybody, so Laura, Thor also can tell you that the time for preparing the proposal and getting the the grant was very quick. Usually you have like a year or at least, let's say, until you get something like that started. And we are like in 3 or 4 months where this happened. So there's a lot of things which will follow now.
I can remember, and yeah, okay, so it's still a process, which makes sense. Let's switch to the next question. How is the talent development pillar going to be made possible in the realm of AI factories? Anybody want to answer that question?
What we see now is that there is for sure a lack of skills related to the AI in the market at the national level. It is very difficult also to fill in the vacancies that we have. So we, as us providing, let's say, having vacancies open, but we see that this is also common for other entities at the national level. So we hope that by providing trainings and working also with universities, but other course providers for private entities. We hope that by providing certifications, we are able to improve the knowledge on AI technologies and AI on HPC, and so that those people can then enter the workforce in the upcoming months or in the next year or so. So this is where we hope to fill in the gaps. Of course, then we will also try to target, let's say, those type of users and communities that are underrepresented in the field. For example, there is a strong gender imbalance, and this is something that we also wrote in our proposal with maybe targeted courses to try to balance a bit the situation.
Thank you. All right, so we still have lots of questions, and my suggestion is I'm going to ask, I don't know, 2 or 3 more questions, and then afterwards our participants, if you feel like your question was missing or has not been answered yet, then just raise a hand and ask your question directly, and then we are going to wrap up. Yeah, so the questions that I want to ask still are regarding the services and access provided to SMEs, industries, as compared to academia. What does the distinction look like, if there is any? Could you just summarize that maybe in a few words?
I got a little bit distracted by all the other sorts of questions here through the chat.
I know it's
Q&A.
distracting. Yeah, I know. But it's great that we have so much interest. So the questions, like we got a few questions regarding on the trainings or services offered by the AI factories, and if the AI factories can be used for commercial development, what the requirements for access and application are for commercial players and for academia, if there is a difference. And there is one specific question about financial support for third parties funding. If the open call for startups and SMEs will be supported by such funding.
Okay.
So if you, Markus?
I can answer partially. So if it comes to the funding question, so there's no cascade funding foreseen. So if there, so the services which the AI factories provide are basically just as they are. There might be experts around which can point you to funding possibilities, either in for the startup sector like venture capital or something like that, or to national or EU funding sources. But the AI factory themselves just offer the services, and that they might be, let's say, subject to de minimis or regulations in the countries or similar. So what was the other points? I forgot. Sorry.
Well,
But
I can address maybe.
Yeah.
So commercialization or commercial use cases. I mean, the factories will be open to SME startups, even larger companies, maybe on a pay-per-use basis. subsidized by the EU, but it's not going to be the end station of productionized, a project that's put on market. There will have to be an offboarding stage at some point where the development that has taken place within the AI factory on the hardware within the AI factory and with support from the staff, expert staff, that will have to be offboarded at some point, but hopefully with a tight feedback loop. So you can come back as a customer of the AI factory. You've already deployed your product, you're scaling it in the cloud somewhere, whatever. Maybe we even help you do that, I'm not sure. But there should be a feedback loop that you can come back and you can continue iteratively developing your model, and maybe there will even be automation, building on top of the technical infrastructure, the API or whatever, for the AI factory with outside world, so that you can actually do this in workflows. But yeah, so I mean, the AI factory hardware will not be for deployed commercialized services as a end station. That will take place elsewhere.
Yep, makes sense. Thank you. All right, so that's all from my side. As I said previously, I would now suggest if there is if there are still questions from the audience, and if there are questions that haven't been answered yet, just raise a hand. We'll give you speech permissions, and then you can ask your questions directly, because as our speakers and I mentioned previously, like having the Q&A pop-up and the chat pop-up can be a bit confusing, and it might be easier if you can ask questions directly.
Also notice that there are unanswered questions in the Q&A.
I got the right to speech. I'm here from NCT Croatia. So I'm just going to be brief. I think Laura answered one of my questions by answering somebody else. So the AI factories are not planning to deploy infrastructure for inference, because that could basically be larger than the infrastructure for the AI supercomputer.
So I can tell you what we are foreseeing in Italy. What we see is that we are not going to have inference for business-to-business type of use cases. We might offer inference for public administrations and other research projects, provided that they are considered useful and needed by the whole Italian ecosystem. So this is where we, let's say, draw the line. So our type of inference is that we can provide is not business to business. Okay. I hope I answered.
Yeah, your answer is perfect, because I mean, otherwise, as I said, the resource would be much bigger on the inference side. But then just the last question is, then this inference part would go on this Gaia system, which is separate from the AI factory, or you actually included part of a cloud into the AI factory? The same question goes for the other AI factory.
For us, the Gaia Cloud is fully given to the AI Factory project. So it will be accessible via calls at the national level as other HPC resources. And it is so also the storage, which is a vast storage, is fully, let's say, given in kind to the AI Factory project, but it's not funded by the AI Factory itself.
So same question for Sweden and Austria.
So it's similar in Austria. So deployment will be probably only done either for testing purposes or for academic purposes. Yeah. Because the most important point here is we do not have a service level agreement. So there is no guarantee that anything will work at any given point in time. So since we are academic resource providers, and this is also, we have best effort, and so that no company will ever accept something which will not run for 99% or so, because this will not help them. In the for academic purposes, such kind of availability of a deployment would be okay. What we try to do, or would like to have in the end, is if a company is training or setting up the things, and has its workflows, there would be a kind of automated deployment at an external cloud provider. So if you imagine you have to do a training regularly with your AI model, it should be possible that if the training is done, that the newly trained model can be automatically transferred to an external provider and updated there somehow like that. So to have, let's say, the workflow in place, but the inference part is done externally, and externally can be anything, either commercial or half commercial, but not at the AI factory.
Thank you.
Precisely the same story from Sweden. I just want to highlight an interesting comment here in the chat, mentioning that the JU, EuroCC joint undertaking, is working on a call for an inference cloud with EU cloud providers. So we eagerly await more news from that initiative.
Thank you all, and thank you for the great webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, Thor, for pointing that out. Any other questions from the audience? If not, we still have 3 unanswered questions in our Q&A box. Maybe we could quickly go over them. So the first one, which I think we talked about briefly already, is what the requirements are to apply to have access to the resources provided by the AI factories. Could we summarize that again quickly?
So for what concerns compute, the requirements will be you have to decide if you want to submit on the national resources or on the European calls, depending on where you are based and if there is an AI factory in your country. And if there is an AI factory with a supercomputer that you like, that you want to use, of course. And then the requirements depend on the amount of resources you're asking. So for very small projects, it's just affiliation with a research center or SME or startup and a small abstract. And then there is just a technical feasibility assessment, and you will get the resources very fast. For larger resources, there is also an evaluation based on innovation if you are a private, or based on excellence, academic excellence if you are a researcher. And for what concerns the services, then as Thor said before, we don't foresee that we will be overloaded with requests at the beginning. So at the beginning, most of us will act on a first come, first serve basis. And then if the need arises, and we hope so, we hope that we receive many requests, then we will also foresee a type of calls for the services, to access the services of the factory. This is what we foresee in Italy.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. So there was a question in the chat which just disappeared, but that's okay. Instead, the one remaining question in Q&A, is there any data center with extreme flash databases like Oracle Exadata where one can have, I guess, relational database management systems and HPC in the same data center?
I can comment on that a little bit. So I don't know what an Oracle Exadata is, but basically what at least in Austria will be somehow available is we have on the one hand we have the raw computing power, but on the other hand you will have cloud infrastructure. This will be similar in the other AI factories or supercomputing centers. And depending on how you set it up, you for sure can have a virtual machine where things can be installed with a quick or fast file system below. This is basically how I would set it up, and in that case, I would answer somehow yes. I don't know how exactly or which requirements fast in this sense mean, but usually if you have a flash storage and with a Ceph infrastructure available, should be usually fast enough for that purposes. Maybe we have to do some adjustments, but the supercomputing centers usually know how to accommodate that. Yeah. I hope this helps.
Perfect, thank you. And thank you, Thor, for answering the last remaining question in the Q&A box. So I'd say that's a wrap up for now, if there are no further questions from the audience. And before we close today's session, I wanted to thank our speakers for participating and for sharing their insights. It was great to have you. And I also have an appeal on our audience, which is to check out the free courses offered by EuroCC Austria on various topics around HPC, but also AI, and to get in touch with us and also stay informed on any news regarding training, access, AI factories, all of the things that are relevant. So thank you all and have a nice afternoon, and see you again soon.